All right, Martin Popoff here, back again with another edition of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. This is the show where we look at an old classic album and see if the reviewer got it right, kind of thing. Was it a good review, positive review, negative review, and comment kind of along the way. So today we are looking at a review by the great Harry Doherty. Harry, we lost him a little while back. He was a big Thin Lizzy expert. He's quoted in my Thin Lizzy books. I've got what I got here. Anyways, I've got a bunch of Thin Lizzy books. If you want any of those, martinpopoff.com. But he was a big Thin Lizzy guy. I interviewed Phil a lot of times. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because it ties in, is today we are doing a review of the BOOMTOWN Rats, an album so good they had to name it twice. This is the debut album by the BOOMTOWN Rats, so it doesn't have a date on here, but I imagine it's 1978, of course, at some point. Let's see what he has to say here, and we shall discuss. Let's see. Oh, Christ, what will we label them? Rock and roll, rhythm and blues, pop, new wave, all tags apply. But no one alone totally fits the bill as a true representation of what the BOOMTOWN Rats are about. Listen to this excellent debut album once and you'll reel in confusion. Spin it again and you will squeal in delight. It's funny he says all those. The one thing he doesn't say is heavy metal, because this reminds me, I had a dinner once with Bob Geldof, and I gave him a copy of my big, massive collector's guide to heavy metal. The original, or the 97 one. This goes back a long ways, because I put all the heavier punk albums in there, right? And to me, this is a heavy punk album. They completely abandoned this on Tonic for the Troops and Fine Art of Surfacing, which is an absolute masterpiece. This is a pretty heavy album. So I think, for us as kids back in 78, this was a heavy album. There weren't a lot of heavy albums in the world, so this was a heavy enough. It's a pretty riffy album. So I stuck it in there, and he signed one of my albums. Martin, he's daft. Because he got a huge chuckle out of that I would stick them in a heavy metal book, right? Which makes sense, that because it's preposterous, because the whole rest of the catalog veers way away from it. It's really only this album, but it's funny. Harry mentions everything but heavy metal. I must also emphasize that while the Rats summon all those styles with sporadic traces of Dylan, Stones, Beatles, Feel Goods, Springsteen, excellent references all, and much more besides, their adaptation is not one that can be called derivative. This band picks the cream and churns it to create their own identity, one that will become clear with each album, I'm sure. Wow. That was prophetic, because they completely changed their identity. Like I say, they become this really well-polished. Remember, this is produced by Mutt Lange, and they continue on with that idea of just like a lot of production. And once you get to Fine Art of Surfacing, it's absolute masterpiece, right? And then the albums after that, I'm not that crazy about. But anyways. But what is most heartening about the BOOMTOWN Rats is that it shows that the band have left room for real artistic progress in the future, at a time when very few new wave bands think about where they'll be 5 minutes from now. An admirable immediacy, but one that leads only to a short-lived existence. Yeah, it's interesting he brings that up, because already in 78, we're moving on to post-punk. Punk is almost dead. So almost every band kind of left being fairly punky. And so the BOOMTOWN Rats are arriving a little late, but they will leave immediately, right? And later on we get things like the UK Subs reviving, and then reviving punk in 79, and then we get Oi and we get hardcore and stuff. But there's this period where we're really into post-punk at this point, and there's not a lot of heavy punk albums really happening. Okay, the Rats have been compared heavily to Dr. Feelgood, when in fact they are the time-warped, though great nonetheless, Feelgoods take a vital and imaginative step further. The potential for this band is pretty unnerving. I don't like, there's too much emphasis on Dr. Feelgood. I'm not a big fan of Dr. Feelgood. I don't hear much of it in BOOMTOWN Rats. Like I say, I hear a really well-recorded, pretty heavy punk album is what I hear. For the present, though, we have this album to talk about. It encapsulates present, new wave, past 60s R&B, and future, the scintillating combination of both, with well thought out lyrical and musical arrangements. Again, he's missing all the guitar riffs in these descriptions, right? New wave followers will undoubtedly pick up on the 77 pop and energy feel of Lookin' After Number One. Mary of the Fourth Form, She's Gonna Do You In, and with slightly less enthusiasm, Neon Heart, which, while staunch R&B fanatics can get their fulfillment out of things like Kicks, Close as You'll Ever Be, and Never Bite the Hand That Feeds. To me, again, those are mostly pretty heavy songs, and Mary and the Fourth Form is totally heavy, right? The only Duff track on the album, adequate, but just not up to the set standard. For the future, we must look to the sharp arrangements of those tunes, as well as referring to two beautiful ballads on the album, Joey's on the Streets Again, one in the Morrison, Springsteen, Lynette Parker, Costello mode. Exactly. I think I did, or I should have done, I was going to do a whole audio podcast episode all about the Springsteen Van Morrison family of bands, and he just rattled them all off there, and Boomtown Rats totally fits as well, right? I Can Make It If You Can, which seems to be heavily influenced by Dylan vocally. How encouraging it is to see a band tackle two such songs when the river is running, even distinguishing in the opposite direction. Even gushing in the opposite direction. Interesting writing. Vocalist Bob Geldof is undoubtedly the main man in the Rats. His lyrics, particularly on Kicks and Joey's on the Streets Again, display acute awareness of what is happening on the street and in the home. The chauvinism, the sheer bloody mindedness of looking after number one will no doubt win him a few enemies. As a singer, his asset is knowing the limitations of his voice rather than stretching and blowing the gaff, so he works well within a set framework, embellishing the top vocal with some nifty harmonies, as on Neon Heart and Mary and the Fourth Form, with its great childish chant outro. He enjoys a healthy relationship with the rest of the competent band. This is great writing. Trading vocal bursts for guitar licks with Cott and Roberts, ally Jagger and Richards. I'd like to see Johnny Finger's potential explored more on this album. He seems a little tied down, playing a fairly predictable role rather than expanding the music to an even broader horizon. Naturally, with a neo-new wave band, the rhythm section is solid, with Pete Briquette and Simon Crowe providing the backbone. This rates as one of the best debut albums in years. It'll certainly be recognized as one of this year's outstanding releases, and the Boomtown Rats will be hailed as one of the best new bands to arrive in ages. I'll bet my Thin Lizzy collection on it. Yeah, wicked. Good review. Good long review. Serious. He treats the album seriously, and it is an amazing, like I say, it's pretty squarely a punk album, I think. But yeah, Mutt Lange's production, it's not Def Leppard Mutt Lange. It's not even City Boy Mutt Lange. It's not AC/DC Mutt Lange. It's actually one of his most conservative and street sounding productions, but it's just very competent, right? But there you go. Love this album. Love Bob Geldof. Very cool guy. Great solo canon as well, and of course all he's done for charitable causes as well must be mentioned. That's why he's Sir Bob Geldof, right? So there you go. Boomtown Rats, the Boomtown Rats. This has been another reliving old reviews is a useless tool of confusion. Hit like if you like this review. Subscribe to us if you can. If you join our Patreon, that gets you you get on our panels and be part of that whole situation. But there you go. Go play this album. It's a great album.